To cope with the pressure. In studio, I'm joined by Wits School of Education Professor Bram Fleisch, who has come through to talk to me. Prof, thank you so much for talking to me. So you've written a book about the situation around our education system. What is the main point that you make about where our education system stands at the moment? Is it in crisis, as we usually hear that it is?
So thank you for inviting me today, and just to wish all the learners who are about to embark on this rather
not just the learners,
exciting
parents as well.
and parents,
and the teachers,
an extraordinarily challenging moment, their final exams.
Yeah.
I wish them the best of luck, and just to remind them that it's important to put in place good quality routines, that they should eat properly, they should sleep properly, they should do exercise, they should plan very carefully as they move into this exam period, because planning is a crucial part of the success.
Very important, so that your life continues to be balanced.
Absolutely.
So that you're not suffering from the stresses of one particular activity being the exam.
Absolutely. But just to go back to the question that you asked me, I think that we focus in South Africa, because of the centrality of the matric exams, on our secondary schools, and particularly on the grade 12s. But I think there's overwhelming evidence that the real challenges in our school system happen much earlier, in our primary schools, and particularly in the early grades, the foundation phase. Recently, last year, there was a major report came out that suggested that 78% of South African learners in grade 4 are not able to read at a minimal level by grade 4. So children get into the middle years of their schooling and they haven't acquired the very fundamental, the very basics of learning to read. So much of my research focuses on how we can assist teachers across the South African landscape, particularly in poor and working class communities, how they can become better at teaching children to read in their home language, in children's home language, as well as in English as a second language.
So as part of the work that you have done, you have identified what you've called the education triple cocktail. What is that?
So obviously we've had a great success story in the HIV/AIDS space, that in South Africa we've been pulled back from the brink, and one of the crucial elements of it was the use of a very powerful drug regime called the triple cocktail. We took that metaphor, obviously it's not exactly the same, and recognized that there were simple things we can do working with foundation phase teachers that will encourage them to become much more effective in teaching children to read. The triple cocktail, in the context and the name of the book that I've recently published with UCT Press, focuses on three key components that are interlocking. The first is providing teachers with simple, clear daily lesson plans that systematically scaffold the teaching of reading in the home language and English as a first additional language. So the lesson plans provide teachers with very clear guidelines on how to do the teaching.
Before you proceed to the second, yes, who should be doing this provision of these clear lesson plans on a daily basis for teachers? Where should that responsibility lie so that it's done effectively and adequately?
So at the moment, it's been done by the provincial departments, and there's research which we're really engaged in. At the moment, we're developing the research base, the evidence base for the new approach to teaching of reading. So ultimately, once the evidence is substantial, we will be moving towards large-scale, system-wide implementation by the provinces across all the primary schools, or specifically the schools that are having difficulty.
Take us through the second component of this triple cocktail.
So the second component is, we know that if children don't have materials to read at the right level, if they're reading books that are either too difficult or too simple, they're not going to actually progress in their reading. They have to have materials that are appropriate to each of our national languages. It's not okay to get a book that is written in English translated into one of our African languages, because we recognize that each of our languages have unique structures, and we need to develop materials that are specific and developed around the unique linguistic structures of each of the languages, and that are properly sequenced and properly leveled, so that children do have an opportunity to work at the right level for them and build their skills and competencies. Up until recently, many schools didn't have graded readers or leveled readers that allowed those children to progress systematically through
I imagine that must be a particular challenge. I seem to have picked up somewhere that the amount of output in as far as writing, particularly in the African languages, is not really what it should be?
I think we're beginning to address that problem. I think that that's obviously one of the crucial dimensions of preparing children effectively to become good readers, that they have the right kind of materials, and there are growing numbers of resources that are becoming available. Right. So that's a crucial resource.
Prof, I'm out of time. Just a final one, then you are going to take us through the third component of the triple cocktail.
So we know that lesson plans are important, we know the right materials are important, but the third component is teachers need somebody who they trust to help them understand how to do it in their classroom. And this is what we call an instructional coach, somebody who can provide hands-on, in-situation, provide support to teachers so they can learn the new practice.
Great insights. Are you sharing them with the Department of Education?
Certainly, we work very closely with the department. They're the leaders in this research, and I need to give full credit to the department for recognizing the centrality of evidence-based policy development.
Next step, of course, is implementation. Thank you so much, Prof. Bram Fleisch, who is from the Wits School of Education, and talking to us there about the interventions that are needed in education.